Buenas tardes, LEC community. This is Delia, your High Impact Practice Director at the LEC, where we strive to increase the representation of Latinx educators K through 12. And this evening for Ask an Educator, we have Gersom Paredes, new assistant principal at Wyando High School in Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools, home of the Bulldogs. They're very proud of that and all the red. I'm surprised Gersom's not wearing red right now. Gersom, welcome. Welcome home. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, who your people are, where they're from, and how do you engage in your community at Wyando High School?
Well, thanks for having me on. I am going to have red on. I got a volleyball game to supervise, so I got to change out of this blue and get into red. But thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Gersom Paredes, new assistant principal at Wyando High School, in charge of the ACE Academy, first year administrator after 10 years in the classroom as a teacher. So a little bit about me. I was born in Houston, Texas. My parents, who are immigrants, came from Mexico, Coahuila, Mexico, and that's my mom. And my dad came from Santa Tecla, El Salvador. So they came over to the United States for their reasons, to better life and escape poverty and war in El Salvador. And I was born in it's growing up in that house. It was Spanish only, español solamente. Si quieres comer, me dices que quieres comer, and te lo hago. And so at a very young age, they always pushed me to be really alert on my education, because it was going to open doors for me. So really, really interesting career in the education world for me as a student. I was in Texas. They put us in the bilingual classes from pre-K, kindergarten, first grade. We were in the bilingual classes because it was just such a large influx of students who were in there. And then I remember telling my mom, I was like, I kind of want to get out of these classes. I want to be in the English classes. And back in those times, you couldn't really get out of those classes. You had to take a test, which was predominantly in English. And I had English, obviously, but they gave me the test. And then, surprise, surprise, I tested in the gifted and talented portion of it. And so they immediately pulled me out of there and putting me in enrichment classes and all these things. So I kind of realized that I had a brain. I had to kind of how to use it because everyone's telling me you're gifted. And so, went through elementary down in Pasadena, Texas. And it was really in 5th grade with this teacher, Miss Regner, who told me about college. She was like, you're going to go to college. And I didn't know what that was. And so she's like, you can do great things. And, went through middle school and high school. And that was the only teacher that ever told me that. And I remember that to this day. My counselors never told me that. Down there where I'm from, a lot of the kids, Hispanic kids, are expected to go work in their refinerías and in the construction and the refineries. They're not expected to go to college. And then I started playing football, and one of my coaches said, hey, you got an ability to go play football in college if you got the good grades. And I said, well, I do have good grades. And so he's like, you got a chance. And so, I went, I got my first degree at a small school, Briarcliff University in Iowa, played football there. Met my wife, who's from this area. So my wife is a KCK girl, went to Bishop Ward, and so moved out here. Still wasn't teaching yet, though. I was really just coaching. And so I was coaching at St. James. So St. James had just opened up, and started coaching, helping them start their programs, football and track. And I remember we had to go through these crazy long bus drives to get to Wamego and Osawatomie because they were in 4A. And so we'd have to leave on the bus, and the kids were like, and they called me Coach P, and they're like, "Hey, Coach P, do you speak Spanish?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And so they said, "Can you help us?" And I was like, "Well, what is it?" Not having any educational classes ever taken. They're like, "Well, this, and that," and just the simple things. And so I told them how it worked, and like, "This is how I know it works." And they were like, "Wow, you're a way better teacher than our teacher. Why don't you become a teacher and teach?" And so I was like, yeah, because I was working 3 jobs. I was working overnight at a pharmacy. We're doing some side gigs and then the coaching contracts. I was working 3 jobs. Um, and, didn't have any kids yet, was a newlywed. And so my sister-in-law got me into UMKC in terms of you can kind of go through this teaching program really accelerated. And I went there and fell in love with the campus. I was a commuting student. The teachers were phenomenal, just phenomenal. It really opened up my eyes. And then it really opened up that even though I spoke Spanish, I had a lot of gaps. And they were quick to tell me, you have some gaps that you need to, kind of fill. And some of the professors, I think you might know some of them, Shaneth Carranza, Dr. Reckley, Dr. Imperiale, who was just he was my go-to. He was my savior because he really, I would write papers and he would tear them up. He said, you need to get better. This is, this is básico. And I'm like, dang. And so I would have to rewrite everything. And then once I started kind of seeing it, and I was like, okay, I see what you're seeing. And so, and then the educational courses, how to really teach in the urban core. Dr. Valerie Blackwell, Dr. Pacina, who I know oh my God, just really opened my eyes on the teaching world and really, really kind of instilled in me a passion that you have a chance to really impact lives. And Dr. Pacino was like, you've been a coach and that's great, but there's more that our kids need inside the classroom. And even when you're in the classroom, you're going to have to mentor them because you might be their only bright spot of the day. Because, a lot of kids do come to our schools with trauma and things that they're dealing with and tough home lives. So it's like you might be their only bright spot of the day. So you really have to impact them. So that's really been, that's how I became a teacher. My parents supported me. My parents have always been very supportive. My grandma was a teacher on my dad's side in El Salvador. Nice. So I was like, when I was like, hey, it's just kind of the family thing to do to be an educator. And so, that's how it's been. And my family's always been on rock. My wife's family is just a great people. All of them went to Bishop Ward, just great people. And so those are my people right now in Wyando. Wyando right now, it's been so welcoming for me with Mary Stewart giving me the opportunity to come into this school again for the third time. Most people don't realize I was a student teacher here under Mr. Vacanti. And then when he retired, he called me and said, hey, I really would like for you to come teach at this school and take over for me. And he knew I lived right down the street from the school. And so I was 200 yards from the school at that time. And I said, yeah, I'd love to come in because I was in Raytown. I was having great success in Raytown too. And so I came here, and really this is the place where people were like, you got a knack to really inspire kids and kind of work with and collaborate with colleagues and really kind of empower them. I was writing grants for the school. I was bringing in people from UMKC for our like diversity fair. They would come in and do things. So I was really kind of just getting involved more, and that was really important for me. Writing scholarship letters for our kids and really hustling because I was at the middle school in Raytown, and here I really realized how our undocumented kids are really impacted by limited capabilities that they have for post-secondary. So I was just writing recommendation letters for our kids for every scholarship that they qualified for our documented and undocumented kids. And so I really learned that you really got to hustle for our kids here. And so,
well, I definitely hear your passion for it. And gosh, so starting it as a student intern at Wyandotte, then you went to Raytown. And I remember Vicante. How do you say his last name?
Vacanti.
With a
Yes.
P or a V?
With a V.
Vicante.
Vacanti. Yeah.
I
And
remember him when
yeah, he was a good guy. He was a good guy. He was unique, but he was just he would
I
tell
loved
me
him.
he
Yeah.
would just tell me the stories, and he was here for a long time.
And
Um,
he spoke Italian too, I remember. Well,
yes, he was
Italian was
Italian.
native,
He was
yeah,
Italian,
native
yeah.
language,
And
yeah.
so yeah,
And
so
David Young, rest in peace.
yeah,
Yes,
and
I
yeah, those were
remember those
great
two
people
guys.
here. Yeah, so those PDs we would be in, and
Oh,
kind
I
of
loved them. You
yeah.
know, what I loved about him was both of them is that they would challenge us younger teachers to
Hmm.
think about what research and best practices said. And I'll never ever forget when they presented Krashen's
Yep, I was about to say his
uh,
name.
uh, a language acquisition
Yeah.
theory, right?
Yeah, comprehensible
Oh,
input was
yes.
every time.
It's like you
Comprehensible,
have to.
exactly how you do this. Comprehensible input. And Mr. Vacanti would just look at me. He's like, "Soak it in," and I'm like, and so I'm like, "Okay."
And
So
he
yeah,
would be so proud of David. He'll go
yep,
like,
soak it
oh,
in.
I love it.
Yeah.
But you know, thank you for shouting out those educators out at UMKC. I know Dr. Reckley. I aspire to be an educator as her. But yeah, Dr. Shanat Carasas,
Hmm.
Villamandos, Imperiale was one of my favorites. And because of him, I
Hmm.
took all the classics, or El Siglo de Oro.
Hmm.
So novelas ejemplares, Don Quixote, Villamandos was also, I only had him for like the grammar classes. So yeah, I have a little trauma with that too.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
used to joke around in
yeah,
class and say like, my paper looks like el sangre de Cristo. Like it was just all
yeah,
like with red marks.
yep,
And I don't know about you, but we noticed those of us who were I guess like heritage speakers or natives, or they consider us native speakers because we grew up bilingual,
yeah,
and we would have like all these corrections to be made, but it was still a B, like it was good. But then like my native English speaking friends, they'd have just as many red marks or more, and it would be like an A minus.
yeah.
And we knew not to question why. It's just because
The expectation,
the expectation
the
was a little high, and
expectation.
it's what we do to our kids too sometimes, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah, I know you could do better than this. We come from a different place, or
yeah.
so it's like but yeah, thanks for that. I always remember UMKC folks, and it's pretty dope. You and Alicia Rodriguez, who's a teacher at Sumner now. um I believe Jessica Herman, who's also a teacher at Sumner. A lot of Spanish teachers, just put it that way, in the KCK school district, KCMO school district,
Yeah.
has gone through that UMKC program. So shout out to UMKC. Um, well, thank you for sharing that, that leadership story and your upbringing, your journey as a student. Wow, like you were just placed in the bilingual program because because your
Yeah,
last name, maybe,
probably.
or
Yeah, I've noticed in the, now working in the admin side, when in my son, I've noticed when you fill out your paperwork and you check a certain box, um, it's like you're automatically put right there. Like my son, who knows a little bit of Spanish, but just basic words because abuelo and abuela spoil him.
yeah,
Um, is Spanish spoken at the home? And I said, yes. And immediately Kelpa testing and all these
yeah,
things. And it's like, and then when they were asking me, they're like, we want to follow up. I said, well, Spanish is spoken at the home. I said, well, yeah, I speak Spanish. I speak Spanish like on the phone and things like that. I mean, the question, if you're asking me Spanish spoken at the home, yes, but does my son speak Spanish? Not really, no.
mm-hmm.
And so I kind of knew right away. I was like checking a certain box. Some kids are just pushed
Yep,
this way, and so it
mm-hmm.
needs to be a kind of a cleaner system. And I brought
And
that up in meetings, like, hey, just because the Spanish is spoken at the home, me and my wife can speak Spanish.
Hmm.
Or me, I'm on the phone and conducting business in Spanish, but that doesn't mean my son speaks Spanish. So,
Right.
um, you know,
No,
don't,
that's good. That's
yeah,
good. And now that you're in that leadership role, you can kind of give them feedback. I always mention like it would be great if districts or buildings if they have the capacity, because that too, like maybe they don't have the people power to do it, but it would make sense to just do like a follow-up screening
yeah,
and just have a conversation with them, have them speak in different tenses. It's like now
yeah.
you're good,
Almost like like a
or like a
diagnostic
writing.
test, like a
Right.
diagnostic test. So that's what we did in Olathe when we started the heritage program over there. So that was part of the reason I left. Wyandotte that first time was um, Olathe came in with the deal that I couldn't pass up.
Hmm.
Starting heritage from scratch,
Nice.
working alongside great educators like Dr. Marta Silva and
Hmm.
Adriana Willem, and starting it from scratch and really building it up. And then that's how the admin started, because they offered a package deal where I could get my master's degree through them and really
Nice.
really focus on that. So
Nice.
and then coaching in Olathe North, football is a very storied program, and so that deal was just so good to pass up, and
Hmm.
that's why I had to leave
And
Wyandotte.
wasn't that the new high school too?
That no, Olathe West was starting up the year
Okay.
after. So my first year at Olathe North was the last year before West opened. So Olathe West opened the following year, and we knew some of our kids were going to go over there, and so we really wanted them to get some type of background with heritage, because they told us they were gonna open it up over there, and so it was very important for us to give them a solid base. In that first year that we started heritage, Marta Silva and Adriana Willem really took it first. I was kind of not left out, but more of a consultant role, was teaching the regular Spanish courses, and we would
Hmm.
all collaborate together. And we really started that program. And those women really did a majority of the work. I was there to kind of consult, and this is what I see, this is what I've experienced, and
Hmm.
gave them some strategies, because sometimes some certain things weren't working out the way they wanted, and said, let's try this instead. And
Hmm.
it was great to build that program, and then we built it in such a way that it just expanded. So it went to West, and they brought in their staff, but now all the Olathe schools, all the Olathe high schools have a heritage program now. And
Nice.
it even sprinkled over to the middle schools. And that was really just a testament to the hard work that Marta and Adriana put in. And then my last couple of years in Olathe, I started teaching the heritage class, and just was just so grateful to get those kids again, because I hadn't taught heritage since I had left Wyandotte. And
Mm.
it was a point where I was like, I really want to reconnect with this.
Yes. It's a
And
whole different group.
yeah, it's a different group, because you get to
And
hear their stories, and their
yes.
stories just really impact you. And
Hmm.
and I love teaching the regular Spanish courses for the non-heritage kids. I really built great
Hmm.
relationships with those kids, but I just felt like as the Hispanic population was growing out of Lake the North, I needed to get more involved. And so
Yes, absolutely.
when I got it, immediately started connecting them with the Hispanic Development Fund, and then getting them those
Hmm.
resources, and then just really teaching them how, even if you don't have a certain piece of paper, you still got dreams you can still accomplish. And
Mm.
so, just kind of teaching them and showing them all the different avenues they can go. And I always told them, colleges, some of them, because I don't want to go to college. And I said, that's fine. Get some type of vocational training, and I
Mhm.
said, what do you want to do? Quiero ser mecánico. And I'm like, all right, look, I would find them places where they can go, they're close to home, and said, look,
Mhm.
you can go here and get training to be a mechanic. You can get some certification. And
Nice.
just because you don't have a certain piece of paper, you can go get one,
Mm.
another type of certain paper that shows that you are qualified to do something, and you can do something with yourself and your education, because no one can take that away from you.
Mhm.
So that was it. And really,
Absolutely.
those last couple of years was really just getting involved more. And then the admin thing really took off for me. Before I left Olathe, those 2.5 years, I was really trying hard to get an admin job. And
Mhm.
just and there were some hurdles and some things that some setbacks. Um, and was just kind of applying in districts in places that I felt, okay, this is a good spot. I just didn't want to jump into something, but I was really strategic. Being the coach I am, I'm like, all right, I want to really be strategic. And then the opportunity came to come to Wyando as the administrator. And
Well, share
yeah.
some of those hurdles. What were the hurdles that made your career just a little bit more challenging to reach? Like, so you started as a coach, you went in as a teacher, and you taught, and you said you tried for several years. Would you say 2, 3, 4 years? How many years were you trying as a leadership?
So when Olathe, brought me in, the admin stuff, the admin intern, I was an intern for 6 years. A lot of people are like, wow, you were an intern for 6 years? And I'm like, yeah. And really it was, people were like, why were you an intern for so long? Well, first and foremost, it was a steady progression. It wasn't like jump in right away. Cause I think my way, most people won't recommend, because you're like, why are you doing it for so long? I was like, you got to gain experience. So credit to Olathe and Jason Herman over at Olathe North for kind of bringing me along slowly. So those first couple of years was like academic interventions, behavioral interventions, kind of little things. And then as I was getting my, more things under my belt, I was given, crisis drills, fire drills, pretty big things that the state kind of oversees and were required to do. I was given ACT testing to help with that. And so it was gradually coming along. And so as I was kind of building the resume of this is what I'm doing, and interviewing for these jobs and getting experiences, everyone kept saying, you don't have experience. And it was one of those where I was like, but I'm doing all these things. It wasn't official experience, like official, like my first year here at Wyando, it's an official year of being an administrator. And as I was going through these interviews, I would always ask for feedback. I felt like the interviews were okay. And everyone gave me great feedback. They're like, but the one thing that I always kind of looked at was like, well, you don't have official experience. And it was at a point where these last couple of years, as I was interviewing, I was running in, telling my story of like, this is what I do at this school. And they're like, wow, you do that already? I didn't get to do that until I actually got the job. And that's where I was like, what's going on? I'm working, I'm working hard for my school and I'm applying at other schools and you don't have official experience, but yet I'm doing ACT testing. I get to shadow places and just build that resume. So every time I lost out on a job and I got the feedback, which I was very grateful for, I went and cleaned that up. So you don't have experience in this. I went and got it. Was it official? No, but I went and asked my building administrator, I need to get this under my belt now. And then every year it was always, you don't have experience in this. I went and looked for it and I got it as best I could. And so that's the thing. That's the hurdle that I kept facing. And so, it is what it is. The people that I lost out jobs to, they passed the same licensure exam. They got the same courses I took. They just credit to them. They got the job and I didn't, but I'm very grateful for those experiences and that ability to interview. And it really got my name out there and people were kind of noticing that he's ready to be it. It's just, when can he land that job? And so that's when I was looking all over the metro, being very strategic. And then when I saw the Wyando job, I applied for it. It was super weird because obviously being a former employee, I accessed my account and it had me still as a teacher. And when I uploaded the resume and everything, they couldn't find it. And they were like, and I reached out to Ms. Stewart and I said, hey, I applied for the job, just giving you a heads up, but it still has me as my profile that I have with the email I applied still has me as a teacher employee. And so she had to dig it out from the system. And then she gave me a call and I interviewed for the job. And an hour later they called and offered it. And so
awesome.
I was like, very welcoming. Obviously, like I said, my third time. And I think for me, even though I don't live 200 yards from the school, I still have roots here in KCK.
Mm-hmm.
My in-laws still live here. There's times where I drop off my son right down the street from Wyando where he can spend time with his grandparents, and either me or my wife pick him up right after our jobs get over. And so I still have roots here, and that was very important for me to kind of come back to Wyando and really tell everyone that even though I'm coming in as a new first year administrator, I know this building, I know this community. And
Oh,
so,
yes.
that was very
Absolutely.
helpful. And Miss Stewart said, let's bring you back home. And
Yes.
I took the job, and it's been, it's been a wild ride. Really in all education, just the way everything's kind of folded out for me, and kind of been just how everything opened up. And I'm very grateful for everyone, even if my Raytown people with Dr. Georgetta May, my Olathe folks with Jason Herman and Dr. Brent Yeager, and all the mentors I've had. Dr. Dane, who's the superintendent over at Piper, just a tremendous woman who mentored me and really showed me the ability I had to be a leader.
Awesome.
So,
yes.
I've always learned best from women personally. Mary Stewart, Dr. Anna Barnes here at Wyando, and Miss Jan Davis here too have really taken me under their wing. And, I've kind of shared my experiences with them, kind of helping them with some things. And so for me, I work good with everyone, but I've just really been empowered by women. And it's because I got a really tough mom too, who doesn't let me give up, always pushes me, échale ganas. And so,
awesome.
it's been really good. And that's what keeps me going is, my family. My dad says, when you work at a job like this, you carry our name, and you make sure that everyone, when they see that name, they feel like that's a name that I can respect, because he comes to work every day and does what he needs to do to help the community and help the kids and help the teachers too.
Absolutely. Shout out to Mary Stewart. I know what we were chatting earlier in the studio, and my area of research for my doctoral dissertation is the underrepresentation of Latina in leadership roles in K through 12. And the trending, like for my literature review, where you have to do like a lot of research, what I have found in my matrix document, the trending reasons are that there's lack of opportunities to lead, lack of mentoring, and then there's other factors. And so shout out to Mary for that opportunity to have Gersom lead. And shout out to all those that have shaped you, and thank you for elevating women. I know in this space where, leaders are the minority in numbers in educational leadership roles, seems like they've been there for you, and starting with your grandmother, right? Your grandmother was a teacher too. That's awesome.
Yeah, and she, I reconnected with her right before I took the job through Skype, and I told her, and she was just so happy. So,
oh, that's awesome. What's her name?
Isabella Paredes. So she likes to be called Chabelita. So Chabelita. So
I love it.
Yeah. So when I told her I got one, and she was so happy for me. So
that's great. That's great. Well, congratulations again. I'm gonna switch gears just a little bit and ask you. It is Hispanic Heritage Month, Latinx History Month. However, we want to frame that. How do you engage in Hispanic Heritage Month at Wyandotte, or how have you, when you were in the classroom as an educator? What are some ways that you celebrate your own heritage?
Well, for me, it's really just sharing what it means to be Hispanic for me, and then also bring about some of the stories that are never told. A lot of the history books, they don't have our stories in there. And so one thing that I did when I was as a teacher in both my regular Spanish courses and the heritage classes is I bring up certain stories that no one knows about. And so my last year teaching in heritage, I brought up, most people didn't know that Mexico did fight in World War II. They sent a group of fighter pilots to help us in that effort. And so I bring up that story, and there's actually a monument, and most people didn't know about these things. And so I just try to bring up the history of certain things. and I bring up my story too, and really kind of bring up stories that, people have walked our paths, even though some of our paths and our stories are different, but there's similarities in certain stories that if they can make it, so can you. And it's very important for us to embrace that we are one of the fastest growing demographics, and our story has really impacted us throughout generations here in this country and really in the world. And so it's very important for us to embrace that and continue to write our incredible story as Hispanic, Latino, Latinx people, because we bring so much to the table. And so with my son and my family, we kind of share with him the stories that, the plight that, people before us had to deal with. Certain stories I don't tell him yet because he's so young, but when he gets older, like my dad told me about his stories that he had to face when they came over and things like that. And so, you gotta tell him the truth that, sometimes you might have to encounter this, but this is how you overcome it. And so,
how old is your son?
He's 10. Okay. So he's 10. So, you got to have those talks with your kids. Like my family and my parents had to talk with me, like, hey, when you go out, this is what you got to do if you get caught in this situation. And it's unfortunate that we have to have those conversations still in 2022, but it's at the same time, we got to protect our kids. And so absolutely, we got to protect our kids as best we can and give them the advice that they need, because, when they get older, they got to have.
They're gonna be like, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah. So they only know what they know, and so you got to paint it. You got to paint it a certain way and say this is a reality, but don't think that every day's like this.
Absolutely. Well, you made mention that we are the fastest growing demographic, and also just not only in population and as a general in the United States, but here also as we're the fastest growing demographic of educators in this country. And unfortunately, we're also one of the quickest to leave, with 3 years being the average. Shout out to you and me. We made it past the year 3, right? I was an educator for 16 years in KCK, 18 years total. So you are hitting what year?
Year 11 in education, 11. 10 years teaching, 15 years coaching in my first year as an administrator.
See, I mean, we made it. We made it past that 3-year average. And wow, combined, that's a lot of years. And I didn't major in math, so I'm going to keep going. Yeah. But 5 years is the national average.
The national burnout.
Yes, and actually, I just learned in a class I was taking on collaboration, community, and leadership that actually admin are also leaving between that 3 to 5 year mark, and that's just in general as an all admin. But anyway, as far as the Latinx educator exit, why do you think this is?
Well, I think every situation is different. I've read some stories and I've seen some posts on social media of why teachers are leaving across many different ethnic groups. And I think, as a society, we say we want to support teachers, and I think we intend to support teachers, but there's times where teachers just need a little bit more help in terms of funding, resources, and things like that. I've been very grateful that, in all the years I was a teacher in Raytown and KCK and in Olathe, that my admin team and my district supported me. I knew I grew a lot in KCK in terms of curriculum and kind of building curriculum and pacing and things like that. Every situation is different. And I think it's just hard to know, really. Every situation is different. I will say that I think society has changed in a way. This might be my first year as an admin, and my third time here. But man, the kids are different from when I was a teacher here. It's just a different breed. And even some of the kids that I coached and taught here, they saw me at the football game, and they had also been volunteer coaches here. And they're like, yeah, the kids are different now. They're like, and I said, I told them how they were and how these kids are. It's just different. I don't know. It's tough. I think every situation is different. salaries, I don't know. Every district, I've looked at the salary scales across all the districts, and there's a disparity. Uh, you know, it's hard to really pinpoint. I think when teachers get into this business, they're not really prepared to understand the other elements besides teaching a curriculum, because our kids they come with trauma. They come with real life problems that you don't really get that in-depth educational course that you take out of college to really understand how to deal with it, and how to handle it and how to help our kids. And so, right now as an administrator, I'm dealing with some things that I was an intern for 6 years, and I don't know if I would have been an intern for 10 years, I would have been prepared for this. And so you kind of go with what you know,
Yes.
what you feel like is the right choice for the kid. And you also collaborate with the other administrators in your building, because you're like, hey, have you ever experienced this? Have you ever seen this type of issue with this kid? What do we do to kind of help this kid and put supports in? So you just got to collaborate. And I think in terms of the Latinx educators, I think there's times that I've seen in some of the readings I've seen, I think they're kind of put in a certain scenario where people feel that that's their scenario to deal with. Oh, you really need to look at ESL. Well, I want to be an instructional coach too. Don't just put me in an ESL class because I might fit a certain mold that you feel like I fit. I want to be a teacher for all kids, and I want to also collaborate with teachers and empower teachers.
Yes.
Everywhere I've been at, they actually did push me for leadership. My very first gig in Raytown, officially, my first observation post conference are like, you really need to look into leadership. And I'm like, okay. And I just walked into the door, and as a teacher, and you're already pushing me to leadership. Let me get, some years under my belt. But I think every scenario is different. Every case is different. But I really want to say to any Latinx educator that, we are the fastest growing demographic in schools too. And if you can get into a building and impact the community, it's going to be something that you'll never forget. And again, I remember a lot of my kids' names from my very first time here as a student teacher, because of the way we had to help them and really hustle for them. It's not an easy job being an educator in the United States. It's not an easy job being an administrator in the United States. But you just got to hang in there and keep going.
Absolutely.
You got to keep going. I know for me and the other administrator that we're our first year here at Wyando, Dustin Wiley, we both played college football. And I tell him, he's like, how do you get ready? How do you get ready? And how do, we bounce ideas off each other. I have to listen to a certain type of song before I come to work.
Yes.
Like you just got to get yourself, you got to get yourself really.
You got a hype song. What's your hype song?
Yeah. Right now, I kind of got 3. I got some Led Zeppelin in there. When the levee breaks, just that intro. Because we both played. He played at Pitt State, and we tell each other every day's a game day here. Every day's a game day, and you just got to be prepared and ready to go and go with the flow. Sometimes you lay out the best plan of what you want to do, and you got to be flexible. Because we always would talk about our college football stories that you have the best laid plan, but then the other team does something different. You got to adapt, and I come in every day thinking, all right, this is my plan, but I got to adapt. Every day is a game day. You got to adapt, and you got to overcome it. And one phrase that I got from a coach is, you got to win the day. Every day you got to win the day, win it every day. And so I come with that mentality every day. Because my kids need it here. My kids need it here. I got a tremendous staff here in the ACE Academy at Wyando, and they're hustling, and I got to hustle for them, and I got to hustle for my kids. So every day I got to win the day, and just got to keep going every day. That's the only thing I know how to do.
Gersom, thank you for sharing this perspective, and bringing me back to like a part of me that you just reminded me of something, and I really appreciate it. We have this in common. So we were athletes. Yeah. I mean, we still are, I guess. But Once an athlete, always an athlete. I'll go out there and play. I don't care how big I am. I'll go out there and I'll play, and I think I'm playing like I am in high school, college. But yes, I also played sports. I was a triathlete. I don't know if many people know, but I played volleyball, basketball, softball, all the way to junior college. And that that approach, like I think that's why I have a hype song. Like I'm really, really into, and it changes right
Yeah.
throughout like different epocas of our life. Um, but that adapt to change and that flexibility, like that is so key. Like adaptive leadership, right? Like a good leader has to be able to pivot and shift and navigate through, like throw the game plan away. It's okay to write the game plan and spend a lot of time on it, and but sometimes you just got to put that aside for the humanity of the student or the teacher that you're working alongside. And you know what else you said? That the kids are different. I noticed the difference from 2011 at Harmon High School to 2018. Like in between, there might have been like two different, like, I don't know if you want to call them generations. I doubt it, but it was very different. I had younger siblings in 2018, and I have great relationships with former students. So I'd like Facebook message and be like, hey, before I call your mom, I just want to talk to you, reach out to you about your little brother. Like, is everything going on? Everything okay at home? They're like, yeah, why? What's going on? He's acting up, isn't he? And I was like, a little bit. Don't tell your mom yet. I just want to plug it in your ear. Have a chat with him. Let him know that I care about him. I know I have to build a relationship with him, and he still has to get to know me. But da 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 da. Le di la
Yeah.
queja, right?
Yeah.
And then he came back, and he kind of like shaped up a little bit, but then he didn't buck. And that was the first time in my career where I was like not connecting with a student. And so then I started to really take my time and be really intentional with this kid, like just saying, how can I support him? How can I help him? Maybe it's Spanish. So I would observe it in another class. I was going beyond, like,
Hmm.
and then something hit me that's like, you know what? This group of youth in that 2018 moment for me, I was like, it's very different. Even coaching volleyball, I had to
Yeah.
approach my coaching style was very different. And I don't know when you played college ball or high school ball, but my high school ball years and like junior college was mid to late 90s, and it was in your face.
Oh
It
yeah.
was almost humiliating and shameful. I'm not saying that's what is needed at all, but dang. and
Yeah.
um
Approaches
and
have
it
to have
was
to be
it was
different.
tough. Like my coaching approach had to be
Hmm.
completely like 180.
Yeah.
And it was really about their humanity and understanding the traumas that they bring in, and shoot, our traumas. When you mentioned kids are coming in, teachers come in, right,
Hmm.
with their own. um so thank you for mentioning that importance and reminder of being adaptive. Having a hype song, I love it. And just remembering that we are teaching and leading in a post-pandemic world.
Yes. Yeah. And I think here this is their first full year, I would say, back to normal, because last year they didn't. I don't think they came back until after spring break.
Mm-hmm.
Where I had that experience in Olathe when we came back from the pandemic, we kind of had hybrid and we were in there, and then we came back for a full year. That year, my last year in Olathe, has really helped me tell my staff here, I'm like, hey, you really have to have structure, because if
Yeah.
you come back in without any structure, I'm gonna tell you out of experience, it's not gonna work, because you really need to have structure and tight transitions and really have a plan on how you're going to deliver the lesson, the guided practice, independent practice, the gradual release. Because right now, some of our students have lost, uh, the way of understanding what it means to be a student, because that year and a half really impacts them and set them back. Um, and so, yeah, the pandemic really impacted, has really impacted, I would say, for the next 6 years, some of our kids. I think you can recoup some of
Yeah.
that from the elementary years, for those kids that were in elementary, but some of those kids that were in eighth grade through seniors in that 2020 year,
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna be very interesting because looking as an administrator, you have to look at more and more data,
Yeah.
and you're looking at it and like, wow, look at this gap here. Oh, it was the pandemic year. Look how limited growth we've seen since then, because it, like I said, it just set them back so badly. Even with
Absolutely.
my son struggled with that,
Yes.
learning from a kitchen table. He couldn't do it. And so me and my wife really had to focus, and my wife took the reins on that, really working on spelling words and reading. And I think that's the one thing I think I wish families would understand we need more support at home.
Yes. Absolutely. No, absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up, but I do have one more question. So, with all of your years of coaching and teaching, you've had access to lots of students, and now this year you have some direct reports, right, with the ACE Academy, right, at Wyando High School. If you had just one thing that you wanted all your students or direct reports to walk away from your class or your leadership, what would that be?
I could kind of go through some coaches' phrases, but I'm going to mesh a lot of it. I know one thing, Bill Belichick, he may go down as the greatest football coach in the NFL in terms of championships. Do your job. And I've told my players this. I've told my students this. As my teachers, I don't want to say it directly like that because I don't want to come off like a jerk.
Yeah.
But every day you have a job to do, whether it's be a student, be a good teammate, be a good colleague. And as an educator, you have every day, in terms of doing your job, you have a chance to really impact a young mind, like Miss Regner did back in 5th grade when she told me, "You're going to go to college." And so every day, do your job. Some days it's going to be hard to get up and go to work and do your job, but you got to come and really put the effort in to do what you have to do to help yourself, help students, help colleagues, because it is what it is. You got this job and you got to do it. So, that's what I got to say.
Awesome.
That's what I tell my kids. Hey, what's your job? Like, I got a job. I got to be a principal. What's mom's job? She got to work for the county. What's your job? I don't know. You're a student, so go to school and get your education.
Yes, I love it. Gersom, it was great reconnecting. I think we forgot to tell the listeners that we worked under the same district for a while.
Yep.
I was at Harmon, he was at Wyandotte, and I would see him at least once a month for those wonderful PDs that we would have, sometimes with a coordinator, sometimes without. I think we worked together the year that I was like just facilitating it, really.
Yeah. I remember the very first time I heard you talk, you did something with Dropbox. I didn't even know what Dropbox was. And
Right.
then when you showed it, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Being a young student teacher, you're just soaking everything in. And then I think the coordinator at that year was someone from Argentine Middle School, Maria.
Oh, Maria.
Yeah.
Maria
And then,
Long. Yeah.
yeah. And then when I came back as a teacher, she was still there, but you were the facilitator now, the coordinator. And then you helped, you kind of gave me the heritage thing. Like, here you go. And I said, all right, let's take it. And so that really helped me kind of like, all right, I can kind of mold it however I want. I just have what I need, and here we go. And so that really helped me really understand curriculum writing too.
Oh yes. No, that was a fun year, interesting year. But yes, no, great memories. It was great reconnecting with you. I wish you the best the rest of the year. Please let us know how the LEC could continue to support you along your new journey. Next week, LEC community next week, and then following weeks in the month of October, Ivan Ramirez, our Director of Digital Experience, will be hosting Ask a Storyteller series. So look out for those posts and the marketing that he puts out there. And join us every Thursday at 4 p.m. right here on your favorite social media platform. Have a good evening, Gersom.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let me do the outro. It's been a while. All right, peace.